Money is the perfect tool to implement a money-free society. Now I understand that this sounds quite paradoxical, but as a lover of Hermetic philosophy, I'm fond of paradoxes. As you might know, I've always believed in implementing the money-free society or the resource-based society, whatever you want to call it, in a city-by-city fashion. That way you elude a lot of the difficulties that arise when you attempt to do this in a global manner. But still, building a whole city from the ground up is a gargantuan task that would require a lot of funding. Many, many billions. That means you need at least a couple of Elon Musks to make such a first city a reality. And we all know the only way to get one of those is to have a project that promises profit. Where am I going with this? Stay tuned to find out on episode 42 of I'm Just Gonna Say It, in another edition of Utopolis ONE, implementing the money-free society with money, the city-by-city model. Here we go. So, for Utopolis ONE to become a reality, it would have to generate profit initially, to interest investors. Of course, there is the chance that some billionaire is so convinced of the project's viability that he donates all the required funds, especially in light of the planet's rising vibration, but counting on this won't do the project's probability of success any good either. So, would this be possible? I think it is not only possible, but inevitable, exactly because you would start with only one and later several cities. With all the production capacity that is freed up by non-existence of competition in a resource-based economy, there are always at least two companies competing with each other, right? Otherwise there would be effectively a monopoly, which is illegal. There are definitely debatable companies out there, of course, but that's another topic. This will differ per branch, of course, but it basically means that in almost all cases the freed up production capacity through the lack of competition would exceed 100%, and in many cases be tens or hundreds of times that. We're talking increases of almost 20,000% in the case of a market with 200 companies, for instance. After all, 1 equals 19,900% of 199. I could guesstimate an average, but I'm going to do a separate episode on all the numbers. But this is an example to illustrate the kind of numbers we're talking about. Before I continue, if you made it this far, I'm going to assume you enjoy this video. So please hit that like button, or even better, share this to show your appreciation for the many hours it takes me to make these videos. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Back to the first city. Now, such a city would do most of its food production itself through the use of glass pyramids filled with vertical gardens, with aeroponic or aquaponic irrigation systems, and a mix of full spectrum lighting and natural sunlight. Besides from being beautiful, this is super efficient, but this also deserves its own episode, which I promise you it will get. But in short, aeroponics is growing without a substrate, meaning no soil. The roots are suspended in the air in a sealed environment, where they are sprayed by a fine mist of water and nutrients, which due to the small size of the droplets, is absorbed significantly faster than the in-soil or hydroculture-based system.
Crops are stacked more than 30 feet high inside this 30,000 square foot space. They're grown using aeroponic technology.
Typically in indoor growing, the roots sit in water and one tries to oxygenate the water. Our key inventor realized that if we missed nutrition to the root structure, then the roots have a better oxygenation.
AeroFarm says the root misting system allows them to use 95% less water than a regular field farm. They also use no pesticides or herbicides. Instead of soil, plants are grown in reusable cloth made from recycled plastic. And instead of the sun, there are rows and rows of specialized LED lighting.
A lot of people say, sunless, wait, plants need sun. In fact, the plants don't need yellow spectrum, so we're able to reduce our energy footprint by doing things like reducing certain types of spectrum.
This sophisticated climate-controlled system cuts the growing cycle in half, so crops can be grown all year round, but with a much smaller impact on the environment.
It increases the harvest dramatically and avoids many troubles that can be experienced when working with soil. And the taste gets more pronounced as it doesn't absorb the taste of the soil anymore. I'm telling you from experience. Aquaponics involves a system where fish are used to create a balance with the water the plants come into contact with. The fish eat the plant's excrements and the plants feed on the fish's excrements, basically. Quite efficient. A hybrid of these systems is probably most efficient. Some livestock will be held for dairy products, eggs and such, but meat will not be produced. We need to leave that behind us. Vegetarian faux meat products are getting better, healthier and more tasty every day, so it's not even much of an effort anymore to make the switch. I know that from experience as well. This means that this city would only import certain raw materials and non-food items. The amount of capacity available for export would be enormous, and considering the increase in the quality of products because this isn't being held back by demand for profit, the rest of the world will equal this in demand, no doubt. This means an enormous amount of money that is made. Money to ensure everyone of a life more comfortable than even the most rich of people have today. Money for the investors and money for Utopolis 2, of course, and 3, and so on. As the number of cities increases, the number of products that need to be imported from the still monetary-driven world will decrease even more, as the diversity of industries within our system grows, increasing profits even more. This means exponential growth as the number of cities increases, slowly eradicating the old economic system, which is, as Rick Sanchez would say,
slavery with extra steps.
Another factor increasing capacity by enormous amounts will be automation. AI is improving at an exponential rate. It has beaten the world champion at Go 4-1 in a best-of-5 game. A game with more possible scenarios than stars in the universe, thereby showing intuition. It comes up with designs man would never dream of.
Generative design tools use a computer and algorithms to synthesize geometry, to come up with new designs all by themselves. All it needs are your goals and your constraints. I'll give you an example. In the case of this aerial drone chassis, all you would need to do is tell it something like it has 4 propellers, you want it to be as lightweight as possible, and you need it to be aerodynamically efficient. And then what the computer does is it explores the entire solution space. Every single possibility that solves and meets your criteria. Millions of them. It takes big computers to do this. But it comes back to us with designs that we, by ourselves, never could have imagined. And the computer is coming up with this stuff all by itself. No one ever drew anything, and it started completely from scratch. And by the way, it's no accident that the drone body looks just like the pelvis of a flying squirrel. It's because the algorithms are designed to work the same way that evolution does. Now, what's exciting is we're starting to see this technology out in the real world. We've been working with Airbus for a couple of years on this concept plane for the future. Now, it's a ways out still. But just recently, we used a generative design AI to come up with this. This is a 3D printed cabin partition that's been designed by a computer. It's stronger than the original, yet half the weight. And it'll be flying in the Airbus A320 later this year. So computers can now generate. They can come up with their own solutions to our well-defined problems.
It will take over most simple, repetitive jobs within 5 or 10 years, and the rest in 20. Maximum. A lot of technology is already in existence but simply not implemented yet because of a lack of funding. But we won't have that problem. As a result, in such a first city, if done today, the amount of time spent working could initially already be reduced to 10-15% of what it currently is. That would still leave a sufficient overcapacity, giving us a chance to be truly creative again because we have time to think.
Doctors are beginning to rely on AI for diagnosing disease. Machines are taking the wheel from truck drivers, and chefs are handing their ladles to robotic line cooks.
It doesn't matter whether you're working in a factory or sitting at a desk or working in the service sector. If you're doing something that is fundamentally routine and predictable, that job is ultimately going to be threatened by machine learning.
This is a Stuntronic robot, an animatronic stunt double designed to entertain the crowds at Disney parks. It combines advanced robotic technology with the exploration of untethered dynamic movement to precisely perform aerial flips, twists, and poses. With its onboard sophisticated sensors, it can make its own real-time decisions, all while flying 60 feet in the air. It knows when to tuck its knees to perform a somersault, when to pull its arms to twist, and even when to slow down its spin to make sure it makes a perfect landing.
So for people who claim people won't work for free, I think they'll have no problem working 5 to 10 hours a week for a life of abundance and harmony the world hasn't seen in ages. And AI is getting better and better at decision making as well. The more information you feed it, the better it gets. And with the amount of information gathered by mankind increasing at an insane rate, it will be magnificent. Did you know that by the end of 2020 there will be around 40 trillion gigabytes of data, 40 zettabytes, and that 90% of all data that has ever been created or gathered in the history of mankind has been created in the last 2 years? Every person by now, on average, generates 1.7 megabytes per second. And through the Internet of Things, we're spreading more and more sensors into our world as well, adding even more information. With that much data, AI will be able to take over most governmental issues, leaving us with only an oversight role. And such an AI would not have to be sentient at all to do that. It's already doing it, after all, in many other scenarios. So no worries about Skynet-like AI horror scenarios. Computerized government. That means no more risk of corruption or governments within governments or deep states. And most important, no more incompetence, which is all what politicians have been showing us for the last 50 years at least. I will soon come with an episode where I dive into the numbers in detail to prove the viability of this project. And with that promise, I end this episode. Join me again next week for another edition of Spirit Seekers. The week after that will be another E4E, Evidence for Extraterrestrials. Until then, love y'all, keep meditating, empty your cup, and keep those eyes and ears wide open. Don't trust the MSM. Follow Twitter for your news. Stay safe. Poka poka. Bye bye.
Give me back the Berlin Wall. Give me Stalin and St. Paul. I've seen the future, brother. It is murder. Yeah, things are going to slide. Won't be nothing